All right, welcome everyone. I'm Ken Mertzel, Global Industry Leader for Financial Services at Automation Anywhere. So my role is to help customers identify opportunities for automation. Today we want to make this a fairly interactive session, so the way we'll structure it is we'll have our customer presentation. I'll kick things off with a couple questions afterwards, but then we really are looking forward to having all of you ask questions, and it's a unique opportunity to really learn about how our customers are using the technology. So with that, I'm pleased to introduce Bonnie Dallam from Cargill, who will talk about their automation journey. Bonnie?
Great, thank you, Ken. And thank you, everyone. Good afternoon. I appreciate you coming to how companies successfully capture value from automation. That's a mouthful, right? And I know I'm holding you hostage, and it's between you and the beer tap, right? So I appreciate if you hang out here. I will make it interesting. I do talk loud. I probably don't even need a microphone at times. And you will see me walking because I have a lot of energy. So, and I know that my team they constantly see me bouncing off the walls. So anyway, I am the lead for Intelligent Automation Center of Excellence at Cargill. I'm going to do a bit of an overview of Cargill if you haven't heard of us before. So keep your eyes out for that. Anyway, I have over 25 years of experience in a variety of areas: process improvement, process automation, IT audit, business intelligence. I have my background in Wells Fargo, Target Corporation, Big Four Consulting, and now, thankfully, at Cargill. Cargill is the largest privately held company in food supply. So we'll talk a little bit about that, but I've really enjoyed my time. I've been at Cargill for a year now, but their RPA journey is longer than what I've been there. So, and then with 5 years of experience in RPA, I also had a small consulting business out in the San Francisco area. And so basically what I did is I talked to a lot of executives, specifically finance and audit executives, helping them identify opportunities for automation, and actually built out a whole methodology for process discovery. So what I'd like to cover today, I'll give you an overview of Cargill and what we are about. We'll talk about the RPA journey so far. I have 3 use cases that hopefully we'll be able to go through each one, because I think that telling those business stories is really interesting, and it gives people ideas on where they can really use technology to solve business problems. Then what are some of the best practices that we've learned and lessons learned as well? I just heard in the last session, well, where have you failed? And so that's what we call lessons learned. And then what does our future for intelligent automation look like? Okay, so we're going to show just a under 2-minute video of Cargill. Thank you very
Here's why I
much.
threw away all.
Thank you very much. So as you can see, we are an agricultural company. I am very proud to work for Cargill. I grew up in northern Minnesota in a rural community, so I understand farming. I'm not afraid to get my boots dirty, and I like to drive a pickup. So a little bit more about me. But Cargill is a very known brand within Minnesota and the Midwest. But know that we work we're located in 70 different countries with over 155,000 employees. We've been in business for 155 years, and we work with vendors and suppliers in over 80 countries. So we are working with many farmers across the globe, and I think that's really cool. Here's a statistic that I really like to provide people. We feed 20% of the world on any given day. So you think about that, and that's really incredible, I think. So great company to work for. We provide insights to our partners. So farmers, providing them insights, working with them, risk management, financial solutions. We transform raw materials into finished goods. Some of you know a very popular fast food chain that I think provides the tastiest French fries in the world. We provide the oil for those French fries, just as an example. Other large food supplier companies and also retailers. And then we move our products around the world via truck, via ship, via rail. So anyway, that's a little bit more about Cargill. So our RPA journey. Now, we have had about a 4 to 5 year RPA journey so far. I've only been part of that in the past year, almost year and a half now. But our goal for our COE is to lead the organization to transform through intelligent automation, accelerate the IA roadmap, drive adoption and scaling. We provide end-to-end services within Cargill, so everything from process discovery. We have a consulting team within our COE that helps identify those opportunities and helps to build up our pipeline. And then we also do some delivery of more complex RPA bots. But then we work with our different partners internally because we do have a federated model. So we have both regional delivery centers that are located in different regions within the world. And then we have a continuous improvement team as well that's on the business side that we work with for actual delivery. Because what we have found is that we just don't have the capability to keep up with all the delivery, and so to be able to scale, we really needed to have more of a federated model. I would say not a citizen developer model, but more of a federated model, because we want to continue to provide the governance and that framework. And that's where I have a very experienced audit hat that I wear quite often. And so I love to talk about controls and governance and compliance as well. And we have to think about security, not just of Cargill, but also of our suppliers, our vendors, and our customers. We offer multiple solutions and provide value and business outcomes, and we offer a framework for best practices to optimize value delivery. I'm not going to go through every detail, but we do have a dashboard that we like to update frequently. And so here you can see that the accumulated savings to date is over $18 million. From idea to project conversion, we've captured about 600 opportunities. And then on the right side, you can see on the top, source to pay, order to cash. So finance is at the top of our list. And then also transportation, human resources, and then even trading, the fourth bar down. So Minnesota is known as, or used to be known as like one of the biggest grain exchange areas within the country. And so Cargill has a trading department where we are in that grain exchange business. So 5 years ago, how did we go about selecting Automation Anywhere as the main tool that we were going to use? And here was some of the criteria that we decided upon. So, really looking at, again, those manual repetitive tasks, and who could highly benefit from automation. What are some of the features? Ease of use, because again, we wanted to set up a federated model. We wanted to have people be able to pick up the tool and easily use it to build out bots. Well established in the industry, this is something that I always think about when we get a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails from different vendors that want to sell us their software. Some of them are startup companies, some of them have been in the industry longer. But I always think about what is the viability of that company, because if we're going to start building bots or building solutions, I want to make sure that company is going to be around for a long time so that we don't have to go out, 2 years down the road and have to then redevelop all of our solutions. A variety of use cases across different business functions. Sometimes we find that software companies may have a specialty, maybe it's cost centers, maybe it's finance, but we really needed a tool that was going to be able to transition across different business functions across our entire enterprise. And then security, I already mentioned that, but that was definitely one of the highlights of why we chose Automation Anywhere, was because of the security at that time. So now I'll get into some use cases. This is the fun part, right? A very detailed slide, but I'll hopefully summarize it. So this was source to pay for global vendor deactivation. Not something that we think about when automating processes, right? We always tend to think about finance, maybe HR. But in this situation, the challenge was 150,000 inactive vendors were maintained in our systems. How could we deactivate these vendors quickly and affordably? So we were able to develop a one-time bot, but then also another bot that would be continuous for continuous maintenance. And as you can see, so the middle section is really kind of the tasks of the bot that was built, but towards the bottom in the red, 268,000 vendor records were inactivated, saving $1.2 million in labor. That was the bottom line. And I think that's a pretty nice bottom line for our business and for our IT group as well. Underneath, I'm not going to go through each one of these, but just some of the benefits that came out of it: free up employee time, digitization, operations. Number 2, supply chain order entry. And we're still working. This was an example that we completed, but order management is definitely a big end-to-end process that we need to dig into further. So at Cargill, we don't have one order entry process. Cargill, and I guess that's one of the challenges that we deal with, is that Cargill is such a large organization across so many different countries, and we have many, many order entry processes across the globe. Sometimes it's because of regional regulations. Sometimes it's because of language variations. But we definitely have many order entry, just as an example, many order entry processes. And so one of the things that we look at is how can we help standardize those processes even before automation. This one in particular, and so not all of our order entry processes are manual. I just want to make that clear. We do have some automated processes for order entry, but a lot of them are still manual or semi-manual. So emails coming in with attachments from vendors, I'm sure you've seen this all yourselves. So what we wanted to do was build out a blended automation solution that combined both RPA and OCR. So using Automation Anywhere and the IQ bot feature, we're able to automate the order entry process. And you can see the example in the middle coming from Salesforce, reading the data, extracting that data, and then implementing it into SAP. So 50,000 orders processed through RPA per year, saving our CSRs, our customer service reps, saving them much time. We today are still actively talking with our order management groups to find out where are additional opportunities that we can look at. And then case number 3, I'm sure this is another very common one that you've looked at as well, is invoice processing. So process of receiving invoices is manual, and there are many, many errors as part of that manual process. So again, how do we combine OCR and RPA as a solution? It's not always just a straightforward RPA solution. So a lot of times we need to look at how do we use different tools to be able to combine, or to be able to really complete that whole solution. So in this case, you know, and you can see here, the farmer sends an invoice from email. The OCR extracts it from the PDF, and then the RPA bots completes the transaction. One of the challenges that we have with our vendors and suppliers specifically, and even some of our customers, is that they all have their own processes. So they don't want to enter information into Ariba. They want to continue sending it to us via email because that's what they know. And a farmer doesn't want to, you know, go buy a fancy system to be able to push that information to us. And so what we are trying to do is let's look at a solution that we can use that's going to be satisfying to them, but then also helps save us time. So I'll walk over to the other side now. What are some best practices that we've put in place, and what are the lessons learned? And we are still learning. I don't want anyone to think that, you know, we figured it all out. We haven't. So a few things. One thing that we are also very focused on, and I continue to educate our partners and our executives, what automation can do, how it can solve problems, how it can benefit the company. But what I saw is through our RPA journey to date is that the company and our business partners continue to talk about FTE savings or payroll savings. And we need to get beyond that. And so, you know, what are whether you call them metrics or value measures, benefits, and I have been giving this speech, I feel like a broken record. I've been giving this speech for years to executives, but it's more than just payroll savings. It is customer satisfaction, and that is a very top priority for Cargill, is how do we look at customer satisfaction and how do we really focus on that? So that's a huge opportunity for Cargill overall, not just our digital group within the IT organization. Partner satisfaction, so we think of customers as external, and I would even throw not only customers but vendors into that top one. Partners are our internal partners, our business partners, and then speed is a big one. You know, I think of, okay, here's an example. If you think of a typical fast food restaurant that makes those delicious French fries, they don't have a big warehouse in the back. And so we need to get the oil to that particular restaurant in time so that they can use it. Because if people are going to drive up to this restaurant and they say, sorry, we're out of French fries, they're going to think that Dave Letterman is working the window that day, right? I don't know if you have all seen that skit, but it's a great one. Look it up on YouTube. But anyway, data quality, data accuracy, and compliance, I think, are 3 other big ones. Us being in the food industry, we definitely need to be thinking about all of these, but compliance specifically. And we do have a lot of compliance regulations that we need to meet or help our customers meet. You know, so we think about like a package of like ground beef or steak and those labels on them, you know, expiration date, the weight, all of that, the nutritional. Like, we need to help our customers keep track of that also for regulation purposes, and then also internally within our warehouses. I am not going to go into a lot of detail on this, but you know, you've all seen the typical operating model. So we have, in our process discovery, we have consultants that look for those opportunities, and then we have a federated model for delivery, and then our COE really is in charge of our support model and our operations. So what are some of the lessons learned? I think this is a big one. Think big, but start small. And so that's what we've done with, order management in particular. We started small by taking a couple of areas, a couple of tasks that we can then, how do we go back and say, hey, here's some use cases that were very successful, and talk to order management from more of a enterprise-wide perspective. So that's what we're doing. Finance is another area that we're really trying to work more with them to say we don't want to look at just one piece like order to cash. We want to look at everything from source to pay or procurement to pay, right? Just as an example, how do we get everyone on board? A lot of that is education. A lot of that is collaboration. But I also think that finding those executive sponsors to help sponsor your initiatives. We have a new chief information and digital officer, and I think that is going to be a huge help to us for her. She is definitely focused on how do we make Cargill a digital company. Not just a food company, but a digital company. And so that is on my goals and objectives as well. But how do we educate our different business partners to think about above and beyond, going past just bots? Business ownership and connecting the broader strategy. A lot of times businesses will come to us and they'll say, I need a bot. Yeah, and 5 years ago you needed a dashboard. Tell me a news story, right? So we have to kind of help them and help guide them on what's the problem, what's the question, what's the gap, and really talk to them more, from a business perspective than a technology perspective, and starting at that point. But then also helping them understand that they need to own this, and we also have, once we develop the bot and transition it into our support team, that there are bot controllers within the business that are also responsible for monitoring the performance of that bot. And so we need to help them with training. We need to help them to understand what their responsibilities are. And as well, and I'm pointing to my colleague, Alfonso, but he has also implemented a performance monitoring tool so that we can keep better track of those bots while they're in production. We have over 200 bots in production to date, and our goal is to increase that at least by 50 a year. Standardize beforehand whenever possible. I like to use this quote. I didn't create it, but you can automate any process. But if you put expensive technology on a broken process, now you have an expensive broken process. So. And then IT enables and inspires the organization. For so many years, and I think I heard it in the keynote speakers this morning, for so many years, IT has been looked at as an organization that's kind of that backroom function. And I always said, and this goes back to even the 1990s, when I was telling a partner, I said, but wait a second, if you didn't have IT, you're not going to have as much business, because IT can also help with revenue growth. And so I think that we're starting to see that change more and more now. And you hear about companies that are not just a bank, but they are a technology company that happens to do banking. And I do see that, and I see that probably coming in the food industry as well. So I was impressed when I came on board to Cargill that we had, I thought, a pretty mature RPA journey so far, but I saw that we definitely needed to continue evolving. So I think we've done a great job this past year in starting to evolve into next steps, but we still have a lot to do. So process discovery, we want to do, because as of today, most of our projects and opportunities have come from a bottoms-up perspective, and we want to take that top-down perspective. How do we get in front of some of the executives within the business areas And then how do we talk to them? How do we dig down into their first and second level processes to understand where are those critical processes? What are some of the pain points that they're having? And might that be an opportunity for automation? And let's put that into our pipeline and start working on that low-hanging fruit. Process and task mining are areas that we are definitely starting to use more. And we continue, I think we still need to do more. I am also a fan of data, but I want accurate data. But I believe that once you understand a pain point, quantify the pain point. So that we can really see what is the priority. And so I say, let's take 12 months worth of data, take that 12-month population of data, and let's quantify, how many errors do we have in a 12-month period of time? Not just what some analyst said was, a problem. And then program expansion. We want to expand our program. First, like we work in different regions. So for instance, the LATAM region is an area that has a lot of work that comes in. How do we continue to expand those different regions? How do we expand the different business functions, like I mentioned, order management and finance? And then how do we find new work as well? And I do think that we have a lot of opportunity within our organization that we can still find and still work on. And then, and citizen development. The other area that we want to really understand better is when do we use a citizen developer tool versus when do we use like Automation Anywhere? And again, understanding that citizen development, in my mind, a true citizen development model may not have the governance framework that you want to have. And so really, how do we separate? But you also don't want to spend your valuable resources building bots on tasks that are maybe not very critical. So that is what we are working on today. Ken.
Thanks so much for your insights. So this is the interactive portion of the discussion, so start thinking about your questions. I'll start things off first by asking Bonnie a couple questions, and then we do have one request because we actually have a large virtual audience. So if you do have a question, raise your hand, and we'll get a microphone to you so everyone who's on our virtual audience can hear it as well. So just by starting off, you kind of touched on this at the end, but I think one of the challenges of having a successful program is people start hearing about it and they get excited and they want to do it, and so you almost get, not that you can ever have too many ideas, but you get a lot of ideas. So how do you go about selecting and prioritizing the opportunities for automation?
Yeah, so great question. And I think that we probably don't do the best job at prioritizing yet today, but that's something that we are looking at as part of our top-down process discovery exercise that we're going to go through. And I don't even expect that we'll have it worked out even within the next 12 months. I would say that that's going to be a continuous process as we continue to get more and more opportunities in our pipeline.
Yeah, I think one of the things that you are doing, you mentioned, is clearly for the automations you do perform is quantifying the value, which I think is key as you go forward.
Right, and I'll just add to that too, Ken, is that we do perform a formal value analysis, and so my consulting team goes through that so that we can understand how much value is this going to provide back the business partner. What we need to continue working on, though, because to date that has been, again, more on payroll savings, and we need to work on, maybe it's a compliance opportunity, a compliance benefit, maybe it's data accuracy. But those are things, too, that we can also, I think, analyze and quantify.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of organizations obviously focus on time savings, but as you mentioned, there are a lot of other benefits as well. Another thing you touched on is impacting customer experience, and one of the trends we've been seeing is really a shift from focusing purely on back office automation to more front office automation. So can you talk about what you're doing around using automation to improve the customer experience?
So, and I think I saw a use case scenario where the customer, it went from days of getting back a response to minutes, and, I think it was hours to minutes, but we sometimes see where that might be days. And maybe it's not taking full time, 5 days, but it's just the duration of the time it takes to get back to the customer. And that does not work well in our favor when we're talking about customer stickiness or loyalty, because how long before they leave and go to, another supplier that can meet their needs. So
great point. And maybe for folks that maybe are very early in their journey, maybe just talk about any advice you have for others in terms of sort of how to get started on their automation journey.
I would say I would find a good executive sponsor, someone who believes in moving towards a digital company, or maybe not even company. Maybe it's just needing to be more digital. How do we transform? And also have a good use case in your back pocket. Here's what we could do for finance. Here's what we could do for supply chain or HR. Whatever might be that pain point that your organization is feeling, find the executive sponsor and have a good use case for it.
Absolutely. All right, so what questions do we have here in the audience? Just raise your hand and we'll get a microphone over to you.
So I'm curious, how do you quantify, I saw one of your slides said you saved like $18 million. How do you quantify that, especially when your focus is on payroll savings? We keep getting the pushback that you're not really saving any money because you're saving somebody time, but you're still keeping that person, you're reallocating them to another more valuable task. Mm-hmm. But you haven't technically saved the company anything. Mm-hmm. So we've had to be pretty creative. I'm just curious, and measuring that, they go, well, that person makes, $15 an hour. What, that mm-hmm. doesn't if you multiply, it doesn't quantify out, but there's a lot more to their salary or their pay than just their hourly rate. So.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. But I think, so what we are able to do is quantify the savings for that particular task or that procedure, but then with the understanding that the business hasn't necessarily laid those people off, but that they have moved them into other areas of work. There's a lot of, I don't think the queue ever clears out. So you're moving them into, more challenging work that really does need human interaction. And then also the other thing that we look at is, I think our focus had been on unattended bots, but we are looking at attended bots as well. And so you may still need some of those resources to still have, it might be a different responsibility. They may be monitoring a bot and then they have to, push a button or approve or whatever it is. So their responsibilities may just change a bit.
And I can add to that as well, because I've been in industry most of my career prior to joining here, and we faced the same challenge, particularly my background's in finance, and so we were very financially oriented, as you can imagine. And so what we did is, just as Bonnie said, so we certainly quantified all the time savings, which, as you mentioned, is typically portions of people time. It's rarely you're eliminating entire functions. And so what we did to try to drive that and make it more real is we said, okay, we're going to quantify that, and then to make sure that you really own it, so let's say you save 10 FTEs worth of time. We didn't expect you to eliminate 10 FTEs, but that being said, we did say, okay, pick a number. So 4 FTEs, we actually do expect you to take it out of your budget or your forecast. So that way we were getting some real return, but at the same time, we allowed the business to invest that additional time savings for, as the business grows or open racks you can't fill or what have you. So that's the way we did get at least some enforcement in terms of real savings, if you will, but not trying to take all of that because a lot of it is more for reinvestment in the business. So it's another way to measure that as well.
I would say that where we've had the best success is we've had a few automations that have allowed the opportunity for revenue growth, and that those are the big wins, right? You can show without this we would not have been able to do this service for this customer to bring in this revenue.
Yeah, and that's a great point. The point was mentioned for the virtual audience is just that it's not all about time savings and cost. A lot of the benefits are also in quantifying the revenue growth that occurred as well. So great point. I think there was another question back there.
Hi, Alex Selvas. The question was really about your insight. I think it was maybe number 3 in your bullets, and then you continue to talk about your team as consultants. And so really, how do you find that talent or identify that talent? Certainly I want my team to be business process excellence champions, but typically I'm hiring young career developers, early career developers who don't have a lot of business experience. So the question is really, how do you coach up your team on being business process consultants versus process automation developers?
Yeah. So my leader, who heads up this team, he actually came from within Cargill, and he was more on the business continuous improvement side of the house versus IT. And so he has that business knowledge. And then when he was looking, we hired on someone from a consulting firm. And so they too were able to combine both their business experience and their IT experience. I would say my preference is to hire someone that has more business versus technology, because they want to be talking to the business about what are your pain points, and then talking to our technical architect and other managers on how can we solve this with technology. So I would say more of a focus on business, but that has that consulting or professional services experience. And I wouldn't say bringing someone in that's has 2 years under their belt. I would say we were looking more for someone with 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, the other thing I've seen at some of our customers is really leveraging that federated model that you talked about. So, really all the automations are done in very close partnership with the business. So even though maybe the people in the central team don't have that level of business staff, at the same time, they're working extremely closely with people who really do have that in-depth operational understanding. And so by working closely with them, you're actually being able to get a better understanding of the business as well.
And one more point, too, to add on to that, because we are a global company and we have regional delivery centers, and so, like, for instance, our LATAM group, they have a very close relationship with the business partners in the LATAM region. So they would come to us and to our consultants to say, hey, we might have this opportunity. Is this something you guys can help us with? And to kind of get the ball rolling. So, yeah, that was a lot of collaboration, a lot of discussions with business, but getting that talent pool or getting that talent, it's not easy. Well, anything in the automation industry right now, or automation experience, is not easy to get. So I have a team of 50 plus employees and contractors in Bangalore, Costa Rica, and Brazil. We're also looking at the Mexico region. And it's just really difficult to find talent across the whole globe. I think we're even looking in Sofia. But yeah, it's a very tight market.
Additional questions?
Your processes kind of ranged all over the company. How did you work with the different stakeholders for prioritization and which ones you would build first, and kind of go through that steps?
Yeah, so in our company, we have a role that's called the Business Relationship Manager, or BRMs. So they represent that particular business function. And so that's kind of our first point of contact, is to work with them. And then again, understanding what is that value, what's the business value analysis that we perform, and then going back to them to say, okay, now we need to get some budget from you, because they need to come up with the money for us to build it out, or for one of the delivery centers to build it out. That's probably, having those initial conversations is the easy part. It's getting the money is the harder part of the conversation.
I think it's also part of the benefit of having a central group, because even if all functions had budget for it, there's only so many bots, particularly in more of a centralized development model, that you can actually produce. And so having a centralized view, even though something might be in the top 5 priorities for one business, if it's relatively small and relative to another business that might have 10 others, they're going to produce significantly more value. So that's where the central unit can provide some guidance. Now, ultimately, as you go more towards citizen development, then as the business units do have budget, they can develop some of those maybe more quickly or more cheaply. But again, the central function can provide some of that guidance across the entire organization to ensure you're applying the appropriate resources.
Yeah, and I think our business functions too, they don't really know where to start. And so they're looking for someone to kind of help them take those first steps and to help them identify what that technology solution might be. Some come to us and say, well, I want you, to build this for me in this tool. And we're like, well, wait a second. That's not what we do. We need to just take a step back. But then others don't really know where to start. And so they'll come to us, or they'll hear about us through, what we're trying to do is get in front of staff team meetings and with some of these BRM groups, if they have a monthly meeting, let's get in front of them so that they can start hearing more about what we do. We also have an internal website, and then we're adding to our service catalog, intelligent automation, what products and services do we provide, so that people could just go to the catalog and find us too.
Additional question?
We have under 3 minutes, so we could take time for another question.
Well, I'll mention one other that I frequently get, which is organizations often debate between, is RPA and automation, is it sort of a Band-Aid, we need a quick fix and the systems don't work, or is it a strategic tool? So I'm curious where you...
Both. I'll give an example. We want it to be strategic, but I have told some of our partners if they're going through the RFP process to find, say an ERP system or something, I'll say, well, that's going to take you 12, 18, 24 months. If you have something that's broken, we could help with that. We had a situation last Christmas. I got a phone call right before Christmas from one of my team members who said that someone emailed him and the payroll system was not working, and it's an external vendor that we use. And you don't want the people who work in the plants to not get their paycheck before Christmas. That's just not good employee retention. That's not a good employee retention strategy. So we spent, and we had round-the-clock development. So we spent 1 week, and we had a solution in place, until the vendor was able to come up with a permanent fix, which was about 2 or 3 months. And then we said, that's fine. It was worth it for our, from our perspective, and I think it was over 70,000 employees that were impacted. And so we were able to fix that problem temporarily.
Great. Well,
Yeah.
with that, I think we're about to wrap up here. So again, I just want to thank
you.
Bonnie again and Cargill for a partnership.